My father raised his champagne glass and called my life the easy road in front of 180 guests, and for a heartbeat, I forgot how to breathe. The sound of laughter followed, thin and practiced, the kind people give to powerful men even when the joke isn't funny. My wedding dress felt tighter against my ribs, my palms slick as I stared at the man who had spent my entire life deciding what counted as success and what didn't. If humiliation had a flavor, it would taste like warm champagne and regret. I glanced at my husband, Vaughn, across the table, the just a farmer they whispered about, and saw his calm eyes watching me, steady as rain on a tin roof. That steadiness was the only thing keeping me from crumbling in front of them all. If you're enjoying this, please subscribe and share. Your support keeps the stories coming. To my middle daughter, Janessa, my father continued, his voice booming with the authority of a man used to being listened to. While some of us chose real ambition, she decided playing in the dirt was enough for a price. The room erupted again, polite laughter skimming over the surface like stones on water. Savannah, my older sister, leaned toward her friends, her diamond bracelet flashing like a signal light, and whispered loudly enough for everyone to hear, "The mud lovers finally made it official." I felt my chest tighten, a familiar weight pressing against my lungs, the same feeling I'd had since I was 8, and Dad told me, "Why can't you be more like your sister?" Savannah was the prototype, the golden child who collected admiration like jewelry. I was the footnote, the reminder that not all success could be displayed on a resume. My hands trembled under the tablecloth, and then Vaughn's hand found mine. His thumb brushed my knuckles once, our quiet signal that I wasn't alone. His touch steadied me, pulled me back from the edge of tears. The barn was beautiful that night, soft light glowing through wooden beams, wildflowers from our own fields decorating the tables. But under all that warmth, I could feel the chill of judgment, the invisible walls separating my world from theirs. My mother leaned toward me, her perfume heavy and familiar. "Your father means well," she murmured. "He just wants what's best for you." That phrase had been a leash around my neck my entire life. What's best according to him, never me. I looked at the mason jars we'd sterilized ourselves, filled with wild daisies and lavender we grew from seed. They weren't centerpieces to me. They were proof. Proof that something beautiful could grow from dirt, from discipline, from faith. And in that moment, I realized something sharp and final. If I didn't speak now, I'd spend the rest of my life watching them write my story for me. I stood, glass in hand, heart pounding so hard it echoed in my ears. The murmurs died instantly. "I want to thank everyone for coming," I began, my voice steady despite the storm in my chest. "Especially those who stood by us through the tough seasons, both in farming and in life." I saw my father's posture shift, his business-trained instinct recognizing a speech not on his agenda. "When times get hard, what matters most is who stands beside you," I said, my gaze locking onto his. "To those who saw value where others saw only soil, thank you." Silence followed, stretching taut and electric. Then, slowly, applause broke from the back, Bill Henderson, our neighbor, calling, "Hear, hear." Others joined, the sound swelling like a tide until even the suits at the front had to clap. My father smiled his politician smile, but his jaw was tight, and Savannah's eyes glittered with disbelief. For the first time in my life, I had taken the microphone away from him. When I sat, Vaughn's arm slid around my waist, his lips brushing my temple. "Proud of you," he whispered. Those 3 words filled every empty space they had carved in me for years. The rest of the night passed in flashes, the farmers from the co-op shaking Vaughn's hand, thanking him for saving their fields during drought, their wives handing me homemade preserves as gifts, simple, sincere gestures that meant more than any luxury wedding present on the gift table. Across the room, Savannah and her circle laughed too loud, like laughter could keep cracks from forming in their perfect facade. I remember thinking, they'll never see us as equals, but one day they'll have no choice. 3 years later, that day almost came. The sun blazed down on my parents' lakefront deck, the smell of expensive barbecue sauce thick in the air. Vaughn and I stood near the railing, plates balanced in our hands, pretending to be part of the conversation, but always on the edge of it. Savannah, immaculate in white linen, gestured dramatically as she told the crowd about her husband's 8-figure deal. Miles flashed his limited edition watch to catch the light just right. Only 50 made worldwide, he added, eyes sliding toward Vaughn's worn Timex. Then, smirking, he asked, "So, how's life in manure management?" A few people laughed. Vaughn didn't. "We've reduced nitrogen use by 28%. The university's tracking our results," he said evenly. My father appeared, holding a real glass instead of a paper cup, because of course he did. "Savannah just landed 3 new clients worth over $30 million, he announced proudly. "Meanwhile, you're still playing in the dirt." There it was again, the hierarchy, alive and thriving. My mother patted my arm as if I were a child who'd dropped a toy. "He just wants what's best for you, dear. Maybe you could take some business courses. It's never too late to make something of yourself." I smiled thinly, swallowing every word I wanted to say. The truth burned behind my teeth. We were already building something that mattered. Vaughn's irrigation system had saved entire farms. Universities studied our soil data. We weren't small. We were invisible to people who refused to see. But as I looked around that deck, my father's colleagues, Savannah's friends, relatives who once praised our produce but now pretended to forget, I saw it clearly for the first time. This wasn't ignorance, it was preservation. My family needed Savannah's success story to be true because it was built into their own. If she failed, their illusion of perfection shattered. And me? I had to stay small so they could stay big. It wasn't just emotional cruelty, it was strategy. I was their control group, their proof that failure came from not following their path. The realization was cold and clean, like waking up from anesthesia. That's when I felt a tap on my shoulder. Celeste stood there. Normally, she floated between us like Switzerland, neutral, soft-spoken, unthreatening, but her face was pale. "Come inside," she whispered. Now, we slipped into the kitchen, the noise fading as the door slid shut. "Miles made catastrophic investment mistakes," she said, voice trembling. "I overheard them last night. He's lost millions, clients' money, their own, and—" She hesitated. "Dad's." I blinked, trying to make sense of it. "What do you mean, Dad's?" "Their retirement," she said. "He gave Miles control after his heart scare. It's gone, Janessa. They're drowning and they're hiding it." My plate clattered onto the counter. Outside, laughter drifted through the glass like ghosts. Savannah's voice carried, bright and performative. And suddenly, I understood everything. The fake smiles, the louder-than-necessary bragging, the desperation under my father's perfection. They weren't mocking us because we were beneath them. They were mocking us because we were free. They needed me to believe I was lesser because the truth that Vaughn and I had built something stable, something real, was too terrifying for them to face. Celeste's eyes met mine. "She's terrified," she whispered. "If you find out, she thinks you'll use it against her. But you need to be careful. They'll come to you soon when the mask starts to slip. They'll want help." Help? From the daughter who played in the dirt? The irony burned through me, bright and steady. I looked out the window at my family laughing in the sun, and for the first time, I didn't feel envy or shame. I felt power, quiet, rooted, patient power, the kind that grows underground into the moment it breaks through concrete. Outside, my father raised his glass again, that same commanding voice booming across the beck. "To family," he said. I smiled to myself. He didn't realize the family he'd built was already starting to rot from the inside. And the daughter he'd underestimated, she was the only one with roots deep enough to survive. But I wasn't sure yet if I'd let them. That decision, I knew, was coming sooner than any of them expected. And when it did, it wouldn't be theirs to make. The night they came to my door, it was raining, one of those slow, soaking rains that turned the fields silver under the porch light. Vaughn was still out in the barn, adjusting the moisture sensors, when I saw the headlights snake up the gravel drive. My heart sank before I even recognized the car. Only one person I knew drove that obsidian BMW with the custom plates that read SVNN1. The doorbell rang twice, sharp and impatient. I wiped my hands on my jeans and opened the door to find my parents and Savannah standing on the porch, huddled under a dripping umbrella. My father's hair, usually perfect, clung to his forehead. Savannah's makeup was streaked, her eyes swollen from crying. For a fleeting moment, I didn't recognize her. The flawless mask she wore at every party had cracked, revealing something raw beneath. "Janessa," my mother started, her voice trembling, "we need to talk. If you're enjoying this, please subscribe and share. Your support keeps the stories coming." I stepped aside, wordless, letting them in. The warmth of the house contrasted brutally with their shivering forms. Savannah's designer heels left tiny puddles on the hardwood, and for the first time in my life, I didn't rush to grab a towel. My father stood stiffly, his gaze darting around the living room, over the framed photos of the farm's first harvest, the modest furniture, the scent of soil and rain that never quite left our home. "Where's Vaughn?" he asked, his tone still threaded with authority, despite the collapse visible in his eyes. "In the barn," I said flatly, "working." Savannah let out a shaky breath that turned into a sob. "Janessa, please, we're in trouble." I didn't say anything. I just stared, waiting. It was my father who finally spoke, his voice brittle as dry leaves. "Miles made some poor decisions, temporary setbacks, but the markets turned and you lost everything." His jaw tightened. He wasn't used to being cut off. "We're fine," he snapped automatically, the old pride flaring up like a dying match. "Just need a bridge loan, 20,000, just to stabilize things until we liquidate some assets." My mother clutched his arm. "Please, Janessa, we wouldn't ask if it wasn't urgent. We know you and Vaughn have done well." I almost laughed, the sound sharp in my throat. For years, they'd called our work playing in the dirt, our efforts a hobby, not a livelihood. Now the same dirt they mocked was their only hope. "You want us to give you $20,000? I asked slowly. Savannah stepped forward, mascara smeared, her once confident voice trembling. "Please, it's not just for us. Mom and Dad, Miles lost their retirement. They'll lose the house." Her words hit harder than I expected. For all the cruelty they'd shown me, I couldn't deny the image of my mother in tears, my father stripped of his pride. But then I remembered every dinner table where they made Vaughn feel small, every time they measured worth in dollars instead of decency. "How long have you known? Since the summer barbecue?" Silence. My father looked away. Savannah's lip trembled. That was all the answer I needed. They laughed at Vaughn's hands, those same hands that now held more value than all their investments combined. Vaughn came in then, wiping rain from his shoulders. He froze at the sight of them. "What's going on?" "They need money," I said simply. 20,000. His expression didn't change. He looked from me to them, then quietly set his work gloves on the counter. "You know we'd help if we could, but it depends on what you're offering as collateral." The question landed like a slap. My father's nostrils flared. "Collateral? That's how business works, isn't it?" Vaughn's voice was calm, almost gentle. "You taught me that at our engagement dinner, remember? Never invest in sentiment." My father's face flushed. My mother opened her mouth, but I spoke first. "Vaughn, why don't you let me handle this?" He nodded once, understanding. When he left the room, I turned back to them. "You all spent years teaching me my worth in numbers. Fine. Here are the numbers. We'll give you 20,000, but it's a loan with interest. Signed paperwork, no exceptions." "You can't be serious," Savannah whispered. "You're going to charge your own family interest?" "Family," I echoed. "That's rich coming from the people who laughed at my husband at our wedding." My father's voice rose. "Don't you dare throw that back at me. We did everything for you." I stepped closer, meeting his glare. No, you did everything for the image of me you wanted, but you never once tried to understand the life I actually built. My mother started crying then, the sound brittle and desperate. Please, Janessa, we'll pay it back. Just help us, for your father's sake. And that was the moment, that cruel, silent satisfaction of realizing I had what they didn't: stability, peace, freedom. I wanted to say yes out of compassion, but a deeper, more dangerous part of me hesitated. They weren't here out of love. They were here because the empire they'd built on arrogance had collapsed, and now they're standing on the ground they once called worthless. I'll think about it, I said finally, my voice steady. Savannah grabbed my wrist. Please, you don't understand. Miles, he's being investigated. If it gets out, the whole family. The whole family? I cut in. The one that pretended I didn't exist unless you needed someone to look down on? She flinched, like I'd struck her. I almost felt sorry. Almost. My father straightened, what was left of his pride clinging to his words. You'll regret this if you walk away. You think your little farm makes you better than us? I smiled, a quiet, knowing smile that I didn't recognize as my own until I saw his reaction. Not better, just freer. Vaughn returned then, carrying an envelope. Here, he said, placing it on the table, a check for $20,000. But if it's cashed, you agree to repay it in 6 months. Signed contract follows tomorrow. My father hesitated, then snatched it up, his hand shaking. He didn't meet Vaughn's eyes. When they left, the rain had stopped, leaving only the sound of frogs and the distant hum of the irrigation system. Vaughn slid an arm around my waist as we watched their taillights disappear down the drive. You didn't have to, he said quietly. I know. That's why it mattered. That night, I couldn't sleep. The house was silent except for the ticking clock and the soft rustle of wind through the fields. I thought about Savannah's tear-streaked face, about the empire of lies finally crumbling under its own weight. I thought about what Celeste said, that they'd come to me when the mask slipped, and I realized she'd been wrong. The mask hadn't slipped, it had shattered. But the story wasn't over yet, because in families like ours, debts run deeper than money, and I had just given them the rope they'd use to hang themselves. 3 weeks passed before I heard from them again. The first 2 were filled with uneasy peace, the kind that settles before a storm. Vaughn and I kept busy with the harvest, hands in the soil, hearts half braced for what we both knew was coming. The 3rd week, I got a call from an unfamiliar number. When I answered, a clipped voice on the other end said, "This is Detective Harris with the Financial Crimes Division. Are you related to Mr. Miles Everett?" My chest went cold. "He's my father," I replied slowly. "Why?" "We're conducting a preliminary investigation regarding fraudulent investments and misappropriated funds linked to his company. We understand he recently accepted a personal loan from you." My mind reeled. "Yes, why?" "Because that money was transferred into an offshore account within 48 hours of deposit," he said matter-of-factly. "We just needed to confirm your knowledge of the transaction." I ended the call in a fog of disbelief. Vaughn found me sitting on the porch steps, the phone limped in my hand. "What happened?" he asked. "They used our money," I said hollowly, "not to fix anything, to hide it." He sighed, running hands through his hair. "You knew this could happen. I didn't think they'd drag us into it." The sun dipped below the horizon, painting the fields in molten gold, but all I could feel was the cold sting of betrayal, one I should have expected, yet still burned like a new wound. 2 days later, Savannah showed up alone. No BMW this time, just a beat-up sedan that coughed smoke when she parked. She looked different. The gloss was gone, her hair hung loose, her nails chipped. When I opened the door, she burst into tears. "Janessa, they're coming after me," she sobbed. "The investigators, they think I knew about Dad's accounts. I didn't, I swear." I didn't invite her in immediately. I stood there, studying the sister who had once sneered at my hand-me-down dress and called Vaughn the gardener. "You want my help?" I asked quietly. "Yes," she choked out. "You're the only one left." The irony wasn't lost on me. For years, I'd been the invisible one, the afterthought. Now, I was the last pillar standing. I let her inside. She sank onto the couch, trembling. "Dad's hiding in Florida," she whispered. "Mom's with him. They said not to talk to the police, but I can't. Janessa, I'm scared. They'll ruin me too." I felt the strangest mix of anger and pity. Savannah wasn't innocent, but she wasn't the architect either. She'd been raised to mirror our parents' greed, trained to value appearance over integrity. "What do you want me to do?" I asked quietly. "Talk to Vaughn. Maybe he can help. He's good with systems, with people. Maybe he can figure out what to tell the investigators." I almost laughed. The same Vaughn she humiliated at our wedding, now her only lifeline. When Vaughn came in, she jumped up and grabbed his sleeve. "Please, Vaughn, I know what I said before, but I didn't mean it. You're the only person who can fix this." He looked at her for a long moment. "I can't fix your family's crimes," he said evenly, "but I can tell you how to face them." Her eyes darted between us, desperate. "Please, just don't let them take everything." Vaughn's expression softened slightly. "Then tell the truth, Savannah, the whole truth. That's the only thing that'll save you now." That night, I found her sitting at the kitchen table long after everyone else had gone to bed. Her makeup was gone, her face bare, the woman underneath finally real. "Do you hate me?" she asked suddenly. I took a slow breath. "I used to," I admitted. "Now I just feel sorry." She nodded, tears spilling again. "Dad always said love was weakness, that only the strong deserved to win." I smiled sadly. Maybe that's why he keeps losing. The next morning, Savannah left early, promising to go to the police. For the first time, I believed her. A week later, the news broke. Miles Everett's arrested for wire fraud, tax evasion, and falsified accounts totaling over $8 million. My mother, complicit in the cover-up, was under house arrest. Savannah was cleared of charges, but left penniless. The family's empire, gone. Reporters hounded me for comments, but I gave none. I didn't gloat, I didn't celebrate. I just worked, tilling, planting, rebuilding. The soil was honest. It gave back what you put in. Nothing more, nothing less. Months passed. One crisp winter evening, as Vaughn and I sat by the fireplace, a letter arrived. The handwriting was my father's, sharp, deliberate. I hesitated before opening it. Inside was a single page. "You were right about everything. I taught you to chase power when I should have taught you peace. Take care of your mother. I never could." No apology, just the truth stripped bare. I folded it carefully and placed it in the drawer with the old family photos, the ones that once told a lie. Vaughn looked at me. "Are you okay?" I met his gaze and smiled faintly. For the first time, yes. Spring came again. The fields bloomed brighter than ever, and sometimes when I walked the rows at sunset, I thought of my parents, not with anger, but with a strange, bittersweet gratitude. They had buried me in their shadow, but in digging myself out, I'd found something they never did. Freedom built not on wealth or control, but on honesty, on love, on roots that ran deep enough to weather any storm. And when the wind carried the faint scent of rain, I could almost hear my mother's voice whispering from the past, "You'll understand one day." She was right. I understood now, not their lessons, but the ones life taught me when their world collapsed. I didn't need revenge or retribution. I had something better, a life that was mine, and a peace they could never buy.